out about creating your own decorative braid or decorative trim on the serger, it's really pretty simple. What we're going to use is a 3-thread wide overlock, and I've got my overlock thread in my left needle because I want to use that furthest left needle for that wider stitch. Then what I did was I placed a decorative thread, and this is I would say in the medium to heavy range, in my upper looper and also in my lower looper. And if you look at my sample, you can see this is my upper looper thread, and if I turn that over to the back side, that's my lower looper thread. Now for the sample, so that you can see the upper versus the lower, I did use contrasting or different threads. You could choose to use the same thread on top as on bottom. That's entirely up to you how you choose to do that. Now for our tension settings, I did start off with a 4 for my upper looper and a 4 for my lower looper. So I have 4 in all of the positions from that left needle to that lower looper. You may need to change these depending upon the thread that you're using. So you'll have to probably tweak it up or down, meaning loosen or tighten it depending upon the thread that you use. I did adjust my stitch length to 3.5, and I do have my cutting blade in a down position. The one thing I did put on my machine was the stitch with cutting guide. I did that as a block for the trim that I'm going to stitch over, and this is actually what I'm stitching over. This is called what we call midi braid, and it's a woven trim that's actually really pretty cool. But what it does is it provides stability for my stitches, so I actually now can create my own trim, whether I decide to couch it on, stitch it on, or fuse it on. I now have my own custom trim. Now let's place our trim or our midi braid underneath our presser foot. I've just tested my stitch to make sure I've got my stitches forming, and what my goal is I want this braid to actually be to the right of that needle so that the stitches form around that braid. I've got the braid in position, and I'm going to take a couple of stitches just ever so slightly, very slowly, just to catch that trim. And because it's not fabric, so it's not feeding on these feed dogs, I do need to help it along just a little bit to get it started. Okay, so once I've got it started, I want to make sure that my positioning is correct. So I'll probably stitch out a couple of inches to take a look at it, and I can see that I probably need to move that braid a little bit more to the right because I have too much of the loops hanging off on the right. So I'm going to raise my presser foot and just kind of reposition things. So I'm just going to keep stitching, and I do keep tension on the front and on the back, and I don't want to pull too tight that I'm actually kind of counter pulling like a tug of war, because what will happen is my stitching won't go anywhere. My braid will stay in place, and I'll just keep stitching. So let's stitch a few more inches, and then again I'm going to pull it around to the front, and you can see how I'm equaling out a little bit. So I have loops that are sitting on the right of the braid, and then loops that are sitting on that left hand side of the blade. So we'll just keep stitching on the braid until we have our entire piece done. So I think that I've got enough braid and I'm ready to use this in my project, but look at how pretty that is. It's just really a stunning treatment to using decorative threads and just that simple 3-thread overlock stitch. Now you can also find different trims to sit on the inside instead of having that white. There are black trims. There are also other colored trims that you can place on the inside. You just want to make sure that it is got some stability to it when you're stitching over it. So again, this is a fun and creative technique that you can create on your Baby Lock Vibrant.